Welcome to Empowered to Grow, the podcast. I am your host, Hanan Basha, the business doctor. Following our conversations with empowered women who woke up one day and consciously claimed, I am more than enough, I am worthy, I am empowered to grow. And along their empowering journey towards realizing their own potential and their quest for growth, they became a beacon of hope and guidance for others. May you also find your inner power to grow. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Empowered to Grow. This is your host, Hanan El Basha. Today, I have a very special friend, a school friend, and we hadn't seen each other in a while. I'm not going to say how long that while is. So let's be clear on that. But I love that she has a passion for education, and she's an educator by profession and by passion. And her style is a bit more integrated. She is a pioneer in what she does in Egypt, specifically about leadership and enhancing and improving and encouraging leadership in children, leadership in the teams, and in her teaching classes. And accordingly, she is the head of a school, but she went through the whole story and journey of education over the past 22, 23 years. So, Rasha, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm very happy also that Rasha, this is her first episode or her first podcast recording. So I got the privilege and the honor, the privilege and the honor to be the first to record the podcast with her. Rasha, when I sent you and said, okay, I've got the podcast Empowered to Grow, I'd love to have you. What does the term Empowered to Grow mean to you?
All right. Whenever I think of life, morning, night, day in, day out, growth does happen. But it's all about what kind of growth is happening. Yeah. When you're talking about empowered to grow, you're talking that you are assisting, helping, that this growth does not just happen organically, but it's happening with an impact, happens with a difference, happens with a better tomorrow. I always tell my students, like, tomorrow I'm a better me than I was yesterday. We don't compete with each other, we compete with ourselves. And this is what I think when you said empower to grow. And it was one of the reasons actually that I agreed to the podcast. First of all, I was like, I don't do this. And then I said, life is a journey and we need to embrace that journey and embrace the growth that comes with it. So what if embarking on something new like this podcast is a chance for me to grow in a different way. It's just like branches. So, I've got my stem and that's the education and the job I do. I do little things on the side, like hiking or parachuting, different things that I'd never think of doing. And this was just another branch, trying something so that as I grow, it's a fuller growth. It's just not little bits and pieces. So that's what came to mind.
That's great. And maybe now you will have a podcast for school and then you can have more education. But actually going to that, it's for me, when I thought of the podcast and I thought of the topic of the podcast and stuff, for me, it was about talking to amazing women. I've been blessed to know amazing women around the world, and each of us have shown in their own unique way how they were either empowering themselves and others to grow. And I always feel that there's a lesson from every episode. I grow with every episode, and I love that about it too. So you are empowered to grow, and you just gave a little hint about the hiking and the parachuting and stuff and the education, but you've had your own journey of being empowered to grow. Would you tell us a little bit about your story, please?
All right. So I went into teaching. I've always been good at delivering information. I enjoy that. I have a way of thinking about things, and I enjoy explaining things, even since I was at university. So first I started teaching at university level, and then I went into school. And I've been an English teacher since the very beginning. And to me, I always believe, and this is my belief to date, that education is key to anything, any growth, any improvement, anything. The start of is education. True. And that needs to be done well. And it's not content.
Yes.
It's not in English grammar rules. By far, that is not it. I once said, and I believe very deeply in this, that where I am today, who I am today, is all a result of my school education. And when I went to Kuwait English School a couple of years back, I made sure I went and met the director, Mr. Saddah, the owner of the school, and Ms. Mahmoud, Rhoda Mahmoud, and told them, I need to tell you thank you. I was here only until year 10, but that shaped who I was.
True.
And I've always been trying to give my students a taste of that kind of empowered education. Yes, you learn, but you learn to think and to question and to understand the rationale behind things. It's not just following rules. It's much more. So I started as an English teacher. I've always been teaching high school. I was very lucky to also teach literature. So there's a lot of critical thinking. There's a lot of inferences that can be made. And there's no wrong answer as long as you can support your answer. So there's always a chance to stand out. And I've always made it a point to share and connect to real life all through my journey. And then I went into different leadership positions. Head of department, still taught. Middle school principal, still taught. Business development, education and business development director, and I still taught. I was always teaching until I had to, I got the opportunity to start a new school as CEO, and I was able to introduce Montessori schooling in an international system. And then that's when I stopped teaching. It was only administrative work. And then I left that and I've been heading British school. When I went to head the British school, I got the chance to do something that I was very eager to do. And it has to do with empowerment. I was lucky enough to find people to support me in creating a character education class. Bringing people on board, having mentors, working with the students, and getting the students to understand how to look at their problems, like self-image, accepting who they are, accepting their parents, all different, the different problems teenagers are always facing, and work with them. And, we monitor their growth cards and we try to communicate with their parents. And that's just one part of the school. I don't believe school is only about grades. I believe that the students can get the content of any online site or YouTube videos. So a click of a button, they have an answer. I believe it's more about teaching them how to learn over and over again. And but again, you can't do that if you don't do that yourself. And that was part of why I keep reminding myself that I cannot reach a standstill point. That's why I embark on doing different things like hiking. I only started last year and it's already something that I cannot stop. And I've already been to different summits and peaks here in Egypt. And it's something I enjoy tremendously because it's a challenge. It's, getting out of your comfort zone, meeting people you've never met before. And, there's no judgment. And again, it brings a sense of humbleness into your world, which you in turn are able to communicate because you're able to project that to your students.
Sure.
So that's just what I've been doing, leading teachers, students, schools, and myself.
And you were also representative of the only representative of Egypt within the leadership program.
I was recommended by the State Department last year to take part in the International Visitors Leadership Program, which is a program hosted by the Department of State. It's only by recommendation, you can't apply for it. I was the only person from international education in Egypt. So that was a privilege. Then we had 3 other people from STEM schools in the ministry and 1 person from the UN. So it was a very unique opportunity to go visit schools and universities there, talk about that different side. So it's not only the official education that students get, but I was representing more of a different abroad. Right. In Egypt, we have so many more private schools and a lot more students in private education than is the situation abroad in the UK or in the US. So it was very important to have a representative of both sides so that you are communicating a clearer projection of what the educational field is like in Egypt, and you are able to receive help in terms of ideas that you can implement and take back. Some things can work for both sides. Some things can only work for one side. Yeah. So yes, I was very privileged to be part of that.
Which is amazing. And also I think part of what you said, and part I think of the journey and part of shaping how you want the education within the school to be, is also very related to the Montessori way, which is about immersion, and it's about the experience of the school and the system and the education, rather than just being on the receiving end and just receiving, the information or the knowledge and then going out and doing exams with it. And I remember I only got to know about the Montessori when our son was going to school, and I started, I'm like, okay, hang on a second. I go and they're teaching them how to iron. And my husband looks at me, he's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, I love this. It's about
real life.
It's about living, but it's also about learning by application. It's hands-on, and and I think this is the experience that I know, as much as I loved our, the British school and the system, because it too has definitely shaped my personality. It structured me in a way. And then when I went to the American University, I also got a different angle of life, because for me it was like, okay, now it's the execution and the application of things. But the Montessori, the IB system, and all of this, these are progressions of an amazing immersion experience of education.
I totally agree. First time I went into a Montessori class, what struck me, and this was in the US, and it was a flagship class. So it's a class that people would go. A school that you would go to see what true Montessori was like. Yeah. It was in Newgate in Sarasota, Florida, and I was there. I knocked and came in. You don't need to knock, Everyone was in their little world doing what they needed to do at that time. And I remember just standing there and just observing, and this little girl just put a little rock on her rug on the floor and left to go to the bathroom. And I was like, okay, no need to take an excuse or, ask anyone. And then in a little while, I saw another girl, a boy with a friend, a girl and boy, and they decided, and this was a 5th grade class. But again, in Montessori, you have multi-age. So he looked like a child who could be in 5th grade, but it could be your 4 or 5 or 6, because, they're all mixed age in the same class. And he also put a rock on the mat that he was working on, and him and his friend went to eat. And it struck me. I said, for my entire life, I have had to wait for permission to be able to fulfill my basic needs. But this is a child who is able to identify a basic need. I need to go to the bathroom now. I don't need anyone to approve of my need. I need to eat now. I don't need anyone to approve of my need. I know my work. I have indicated that I'm taking a rest, a pause. And, they take very short breaks or just go to the bathroom and come back and resume. And I said, that's it. That's one of the things that I would like children to always have. They go back to themselves.
Yes.
They don't need to look for someone outside of them to allow them to recognize their needs and fulfill their needs.
Yes.
And
I remember that, speaking of that, because that's funny, and I use that example all the time now with my son. It's like, I was in class and we were senior 3 possibly, or something like that. I was like, can I go to the bathroom? And it was the English teacher. And she's like, well, technically you can, but it's like, may you go or not? That's the question.
Oh, yes, I remember that. Like, you can.
That has impacted me. But I think, again, it's going back to, it's not only about identifying the need and going in and tuning in with yourself, but more importantly, that they have been taught to assume responsibility for
which is empowerment.
Yes, true. And that is it. See? That's the basis.
And that's the core of it. Exactly. Something else that it was one of the things I noticed there, and it was one of the things I really loved, and I wish to see more frequently. Dinner time or lunchtime.
Yeah.
It was a must that, they all sat at a table. They set the table. Each one sat where they have, because, and each one has their own lunchbox. Teacher sits with the children to eat. And as a guest, I was invited to join them, even though I did not have my lunchbox. And they had a little glass jar in the middle of the table with small rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, why did they put that there? I don't know. And what happened was, first child took a rock out and it had a topic, ask about your day, or would you like to eat? Any very minor question. And the child asked the person in front of him that question. And so the person in front of him answered, and then went and picked another rock. And they were just conversation starters. So these children were learning that at dinner time, you need to converse together. And they had the rocks to ensure that they were going to connect, whether they liked it or not, with every single person in the sitting at the table. And do not make it an excuse that you can't find anything to say. Just an answer. It doesn't have to be long. Doesn't have to be, but you are going to take part in this give and take. Again, that was one of the things that has stayed with me since that very first time. And it was one of the things that I'm always trying to do in whichever system we teach. It's like, these are things anyone can do. You don't have to have a Montessori curriculum to do that. You can easily embrace that in different ways. Yes, having it being systematic is brilliant, and well done to the teacher and to the school for doing that, teaching children to answer and question each other about whatever topic and accept what's being said. It's dialogue. They're doing that. They're learning that at a very young age. And again, these are little things that I've taken on board, or you put them in your mind, and whenever you have an opportunity, you try to say, all right, this is a chance. We can do this now. Let's try to teach that, because that's education.
Yes.
Not only the maths, not the science. No. That's education.
Yeah.
I'll share something else that I learned during that journey. It was a very difficult and hard, mentally and physically exhausting journey to start that school and then leave it. But at the same time, it was exhilarating in the sense that I learned so much and had to go through so much. And I grew in so many ways that it could have been a lifetime.
Yes.
So again, I believe there was this teacher, and we were discussing the rationale of homework. for children in primary school. And
I still don't get how my son doesn't have homework. I'm like, why?
Yes, and in Montessori schools, you don't have homework.
Yeah.
So I sat with Richard and I said, wouldn't it be like practice? Yeah, just give a couple of things for them to go over. Everything doesn't have to be, done by hand. At the end, there are worksheets. It's not like Montessori doesn't have worksheets. And he said, okay, so if I gave 10 questions and the child got 7 out of 10, how would you interpret that? I said, well, maybe he did silly mistakes. Maybe there was a question that was a bit challenging. He said, so what is more important to you? The product or the process? No, we sit with them and we see their thinking process to recognize and identify where the child goes wrong. And that's where you fix it. So it doesn't matter what the product is, but once you fix the process, the product will always be correct. But just because the product was correct does not mean that the process is always right.
That's right.
All right, I surrender. No homework.
But that actually goes to the beautiful concept that I started applying and I learned and I started applying in my life. It's always going about to the root cause. Instead of dealing with the symptoms, you're going to the root cause.
Exactly.
So the symptom is he got it wrong. He got it wrong because he didn't understand. He got it wrong because he wasn't focused. He got it wrong because, he got distracted.
Exactly.
But does he understand it or not? That's the root cause. And that's the beautiful thing about the experiential learning. It's not just about the application. So from where you stand now, what advice would you go back and tell your 19-year-old self?
All right. I definitely still go into education. I don't think I would ever change that. I don't think I would change much in my professional life and the steps I took, but I would definitely change the approach I had to my own self and my own learning. Yes, I was able to travel to conferences, and yes, whenever there was a learning opportunity, I would embrace it. But I never allowed myself to feel that I had the right to do things that were not related to growth that was going to benefit my profession. So it took me a very long time to allow myself to identify the little things that I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And a lesson I learned, and I've been applying for the past 3-4 years now. I was always a perfectionist. I'm an English teacher. I see the comma and the semicolon, and if you use them wrong, I die. I'm
actually inclined to think now perfectionism has very much to do with the British education system.
Maybe, but I can't. I only see that, and that's all I see. That's I only see the small mistakes that can be fixed. I only look at something, and immediately my mind goes, "How can it be better?" Not, it would, even better if. How can this be better? It's never good enough. And I always had this idea of all or none. So you did everything perfectly, or it didn't matter.
Don't do it at all.
It didn't matter how much work you put into it. It was not what had to be done. And so I was always very harsh on myself. I hold myself accountable for everything.
Yes.
And then I accepted that some is good.
Yeah.
As long, and believe it or not, there, the movie about when it rains spaghetti or meatballs.
Yeah.
Meatballs with a, yeah. And, he had
Cloudy with a
rain
chance
with,
of meatballs.
yes, cloudy with a chance of meatballs. I think that was it. I'm not very sure, or it could be another one. And they had this motto, which was keep moving forward. That wasn't cloudy with the thingy. It was something, I'll remember it and I'll tell you. And it was keep moving forward. And I embraced that. And I said, yes, as long as we're moving forward, the pace, can increase sometimes, can decline and decrease sometimes, but as long as progress is happening, even a pause is acceptable because you need to have things settle to be able to continue. I had to accept that. And that was only when I was able to actually pause on the personal level. And think of, okay, I also need to do things for me that were not necessarily going to lead to being a better teacher or a better principal or a better leader or a better. In the end, it does. But I mean, I just learned to be a little bit more selfish in that sense. So I'm empowering myself in a different way than as whatever label you have for yourself as a pet mother or a daughter. I'm not empowering myself to be a better anyone for anyone, but who I am for me.
So from that perspective, let's take a time capsule to the future. And what would you like your 90-year-old self to thank you for?
Taking risks and chances. I think I'd like to do that. I think I'd like my 90-year-old self to look back and say, I made mistakes, but it would have been boring without making those mistakes. And I don't do boring. Can't.
Well,
that's I always hope that when I look back, I can truly say I was able to make some day, some time, some hour better for someone. That's very important for me. When I usually stand at the gates every morning to greet the students. And, to greet them by name. Used to be a high five. Now we just, do our elbows.
Bump.
And and sometimes the whole objective is maybe that smile in the morning was something a child needed. Or that pat on the shoulder or whatever it is. And I think that at the age of 90, I'd like to think back and say, and not regret having had the chance to help someone and refusing to on purpose. It happens that you can't, for different reasons. But I just hope I never reflect on a situation and say, I refused to help because I was too proud.
I love that.
I just hope that. I really hope so.
I love that. So to sum up, you're on a stage, and you've been on stages before, but this time you're on a stage. You're talking to tens of thousands of women, and the topic is around the lines of being empowered to grow. What would be that lasting message you leave them with?
Believe that you can and you will. It really has to do with how we speak to ourselves, Hanan. It really does. I mean, I used to think that was talk, but no. We become what we tell ourselves, and we become what we believe. And there is nothing stronger than belief. And we're very good as women in believing in a lot of things around us and working for others, empowering others, sacrificing, whether it's for family or friends or work, and always feeling that we don't have time. And I believe that we do that to ourselves. If we believe in something, we need to believe in ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to accept who we are. That, what if this is as good as it gets? Then I need to enjoy it now.
Yeah.
And we can.
That's true. I love that. So I'm going to put your Facebook profile. So if anyone wants to connect.
All right.
Basha, thank you so much. I love this. Thank you for sharing your energy. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for taking a stand against the norm and coming from a different place and empowering literally generations to come. I'm sure you're impacting so many lives, and I'm sure you're getting the messages. I know personally you're getting the messages of the impact that you're creating, and being at the center of this ripple effect of positivity and of empowerment is a beautiful place to be. I'm very proud of you. You should be proud of you.
Thank you.
And I can't wait what you're going to do next.
All right. I'll keep you posted.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. It truly was lovely having this podcast. And I don't think I'm half as nervous as I thought I'd be.
See, I told you. It's just a conversation.
It is. So thank you very much for inviting me, Hanan. Truly, thank you.
It was my honor. Thank you. Well, as you always know, empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowered to Grow podcast. For further engagement with a tribe of empowered women, join my Facebook group, Empowered to Grow, or visit my website, www.hananelbasha.com. I'll catch you on the next episode. And until then, know that empowered you empowers others. Love, abundance, and prosperity to you all.